Institute of Election Management Services in Africa Executive Chairperson Terry Tselane says the upcoming local government elections are likely to produce even more hung municipality than that of 2016. The former IEC commissioner believes that this necessitates a need to regulate coalitions by establishing a structure similar to the CCMA. Tselane joins us now for more on some of the suggestions that he's been making. Good evening, Dr. Tselane. Always a pleasure to chat to you, get some of your insights. So effectively, what we have seen in the last 5 years is that by and large, many of the coalitions, particularly in the big metros, have not been as successful as perhaps voters would have hoped they would be, or even the parties that were entering into them. This idea that these coalitions should be regulated, how would that work?
Thank you very much for having me, and good evening to you and to your viewers. My view is that the current arrangement of coalition in South Africa is that of that can be described as a fat and set. In other words, it's a very loose relationship where when a partner feels that they do not want to be part of the relationship, they can just walk out of that relationship without any consequences. And that regulation would actually assist, because this current arrangement has led to instability in quite a number of municipalities and lack of service delivery. Now, regulation of these municipalities that are under coalition will help greatly in terms of creating some sense of stability, as well as ensuring that those who are in power in whatever municipality are able to deliver services to the constituencies that they claim to be representing. But I think what is also even more important for me is that I think it is becoming increasingly clear that in South Africa today, as we speak, we are beginning to experience a situation where there is not one party that is dominant at all levels. This is at the municipal level, at the provincial level, and including at the national level. And we've got to anticipate these things and then make sure that we put in place mechanisms to make sure that we can manage those processes once they unfold. So even after the 2021 municipal elections, we are confronted with 2024, where there is a possibility again that we will have a situation where we don't have an outright winner in some of the provinces, including actually even at the national level. So it becomes important, therefore, to put in place mechanisms to make sure that we can be able to regulate and manage this relationship so that at the end of the day, we are able to deliver services to the people that political parties claim to be representing.
When we talk about the management of the relationships, at which point does it become, because, you know, we've got different spheres of government, and political parties then in this instance would be forming coalitions and by and large ensuring that some of their representatives perhaps end up in council or even end up in the administration and the running of institutions. Would it not be too complex to actually say what a penalty perhaps for a coalition that doesn't work is, given the fact that there could be a varying number of reasons why coalitions don't work, sometimes good and sometimes not so good?
Yeah, essentially what we're trying to suggest here is that a party that enters into a coalition arrangement must sign an agreement, and that agreement must be deposited to a structure or to a register of coalitions. And that office, as I've suggested, should operate almost like the CCMA, and it must have dispute resolution mechanism so that when there are disputes between parties that have entered into a relationship, then those mechanisms are used in order to try to resolve whatever issues that are there. Because paramount to all this is, remember, service delivery and ensuring that the people who have elected these political parties are able to derive benefits from representation that they're getting from political parties. So in general, coalitions should not necessarily lead to instability and to lack of service delivery. It is happening all over Western Europe, where quite a number of countries have been under coalition since 1945. And also in Kenya, Kenya has come up with innovative ways of dealing with coalitions where political parties that enter into a coalition, they deposit the agreement to a registrar of coalitions or political parties coalitions. And it becomes difficult for political parties just to walk out of that relationship because checks and balances have been put in place to make sure that there is compliance with the agreement that political parties have entered into and that have been deposited with the registrar of coalitions.
Part of where we are really highlights the extent to which there could well be the need for a conversation on electoral reform. And yes, it has been taking place, especially when you look at even some of the judgments passed by the Constitutional Court. But do you think that it makes the issue even more pressing, that there needs to be a review of whether the current election system or electoral system rather, and how it's set up is actually fit for purpose? And I'm loath to use that phrase, fit for purpose for where we are as a country.
There are two processes here. Remember that recently the Constitutional Court judgment instructed Parliament to review the legislation or the electoral law in order to make sure that independents have representation. But the issue that we are referring to, it's actually much more bigger than that because it is actually in the Constitution. Because the Constitution says that the system, the electoral system in South Africa must result in general with proportionality. So the proportional representation system, which is different from first past the post system or winner takes all system, means that political parties get representation on the basis of the number of votes they get. Now, when one party does not have outright majority, it means it is forced by the current system of proportional representation to enter into some kind of coalition. This is different, as I've suggested, from the system of first past the post system, because that one allows a party with 50+1 just to be able to govern a municipality or a province or even at the national level. But the system that is entrenched in our constitution is that of proportional representation, and it will lead naturally to a situation where there's got to be coalitions.
This body that you're speaking about, Mr. Tselane, it would have to be independent, and I think we've got such a fractious political landscape in the country that it would be hard to convince political parties that you would find people in our society who will be able to arbitrate on their issues without necessarily taking sides.
Well, I don't think it is going to be as difficult as that, because remember that our country already has an example. We have already established CCMA, and CCMA is dealing with tripartite parties, which is government, labor, and business. And yet they are still able to arbitrate and deal with the issues or mediate over issues that are being disputed over. And therefore, I believe that if you have a structure similar to the CCMA, it is going to be possible for all the parties to agree to the credibility and legitimacy of people who are going to be serving in that particular structure. And that structure will have the authority and the legal powers to be able to resolve the issues in the manner that, for instance, the CCMA is currently dealing with those kind of issues.
Terry Tselane from the Institute of Election Management Services. Let's leave it there for tonight. Thanks for your time.